The virile hegemony was ancient, their civilization stretching back through epochs that made humanity's entire recorded history look like a fleeting blink. Their greatest achievement, the cornerstone of their society, was biological immortality. Each virile individual could expect to live for thousands of standard years, barring catastrophic accidents, which their advanced technology had made exceedingly rare. Death to the virile was not a natural end. It was an abject failure, a disgusting cessation of being, a concept so alien and abhorrent that their language barely had words for it beyond clinical descriptors of system collapse. They viewed species with short lifespans, like humans, with a mixture of pity and contempt. Humans were seen as tragically ephemeral, their lives like those of frantic insects, burning brightly but briefly, their societies driven by a desperate need to achieve something before their inevitable, squalid snuffing out. This preoccupation with their own mortality, the virile believed, made humans reckless, emotional, and ultimately deeply fragile. Their concepts of heroic sacrifice, or dying for a cause, were, to the virile, the babblings of a species that hadn't yet grasped the fundamental value of continued existence. In the contested tendrils of the nebula of whispering shadows, a region rich in rare exotic particles, the virile hegemony's interests had recently clashed with those of the burgeoning human expansion. The nebula was far from Earth, a hazy frontier territory. Patrolling this sector for the hegemony was the Eternal Vigilance, a virile destroyer, sleek and silver, a vessel designed for longevity and overwhelming, precise firepower. Its commander, Kalen Prime, was a virile of considerable age and even more considerable arrogance, having witnessed countless lesser species rise and fall. Opposing them unknowingly at first was the human exploration fleet, Pathfinder, a small flotilla consisting of 3 heavily modified science vessels, the Stardust Drifter, the Curiosity's Echo, and the Horizon Seeker, and 2 older refitted frigates for escort, the Steadfast and the Resolute. They were not a military force meant for conquest, but a survey mission, charting the nebula's hazards and resources. The fleet commander was Admiral Eva Rostova, a woman whose calm demeanor hid a core of unyielding resolve. She understood the risks of deep space exploration, but also the human drive to reach out, to learn. The Eternal Vigilance detected the human fleet's faint energy signatures. Kalen Prime consulted the virile archives on humans, short-lived, emotionally volatile, prone to illogical acts of aggression when cornered, but ultimately valuing their brief existences. Their military doctrine, such as it is, shows a tendency towards self-preservation when faced with superior force. He almost purred with condescension. They will be an easy matter to dismiss. The virile destroyer, utilizing its superior FTL capabilities, emerged from hyperspace with silent, predatory grace, positioning itself directly in the Pathfinder fleet's path, cutting off their primary escape route. Its weapons ports, usually hidden behind seamless hull plates, slid open, revealing the cold gleam of energy projectors far more powerful than anything the human ships possessed. Human vessels, Kalen Prime's voice, a smooth, chilling baritone, echoed across the human comm channels. It was devoid of inflection, carrying the weight of millennia and an unshakable sense of superiority. You have encroached upon territory claimed by the virile hegemony. Your presence here is unauthorized and unwelcome. Aboard the Stardust Drifter, Admiral Rostova stood on her command deck, her expression grim. The virile ship was immense, its technological superiority radiating from every perfect line of its hull. This is Admiral Rostova of the Human Exploration Fleet Pathfinder. We are on a mission of peaceful survey. We were unaware of any prior virile claim to this unpopulated sector. Your awareness is irrelevant, Kalen Prime replied. The hegemony's claims are absolute. Your options are simple. Relinquish this territory immediately. Surrender your navigational data for this sector. In return, the hegemony will be magnanimous. We will permit you and your crews to depart unharmed, to live out the remainder of your brief, pitiful lives. Refusal will be met with swift and total cessation. The virile commander leaned back in his command throne, a flicker of amusement in his ancient eyes. He had done this countless times. The primitives would bluster, perhaps make a futile show of defiance, and then, faced with the undeniable reality of their imminent annihilation, they would capitulate. It was the logical choice, the only choice for beings who clung to life, however short. Admiral Rostova looked at the tactical display. Her ships were outmatched, outgunned, and trapped. Her frigates were tough, but they wouldn't last minutes against the Viril destroyer. Her science vessels were packed with researchers, explorers, civilians. Surrender seemed inevitable. Viril Commander, Rostova's voice came back, steady and clear. We require a short period to discuss your terms. Kalen Prime granted it with a negligent wave of his multi-jointed hand. Deliberate humans, but do not take too long. Our patience, unlike our lives, is not infinite. He expected fear, then compliance. On the Stardust Drifter, Rostova opened a secure channel to her ship captains and her senior staff. The mood was somber. They have us, Captain Davies of the Steadfast said bluntly. We can't fight them. We can't outrun them. Surrendering means giving them everything, Dr. Aris Thorne, chief xenolinguist, argued. Our roots, our research, our knowledge of this sector, it sets a precedent. They'll expect us to fold every time. The alternative is oblivion, another officer murmured. Rostova listened, her gaze distant. She thought of Earth, of human history, of all the times humans had faced impossible odds. She thought of the defiance of Thermopylae, the last stands that echoed through centuries, not as failures but as statements. The Viril saw death as failure. Humans saw some deaths as messages. What is the value of living a little longer under their contempt? Rostova finally asked, her voice soft but firm. To scurry away, tails between our legs, only to be bullied again, to show them that human spirit can be so easily broken. Or do we show them something else, something they will never forget? A silence fell over the calm channel. Then Captain Davies, a man who had seen too much to be easily shocked, slowly nodded. What are you proposing, Admiral? The Viril value their eternal lives above all else, Rostova said. They cannot comprehend choosing death. They cannot comprehend weaponizing it. Our ships are old, but their drive cores are potent. If we overload them, if we synchronize the detonations, we can't win. But we can make sure they don't win either. We can make our passing a monument to defiance. The plan was codenamed Last Light. It was desperate. It was horrifying. And to the humans on that fleet, pushed to the absolute limit, it began to feel like the only option that wasn't a complete surrender of everything they stood for. The crews were polled in hushed, urgent communications. The consensus was grim but resolute. They would not break. Aboard the Eternal Vigilance, Kalen Prime was growing impatient. Their time is nearly up, he announced. Prepare to disable their engines if they do not comply. Then Admiral Rostova's voice came back, not with fear, but with a chilling calm that unsettled Kalen Prime more than any threat could have. Viril, Commander, we have considered your terms. We find them unacceptable. Kalen Prime's eyes narrowed. A foolish choice, human. Do you truly wish for cessation? We choose how we meet our end, Viril, Rostova replied. Her voice was now broadcast on an open channel, raw and powerful. And we choose to leave a message. This territory, which you so casually claim, will not be yours. It will be our tomb and our monument. Remember us. Suddenly, the human ships began to glow, not with weapon fire, but with an internal, rapidly intensifying energy surge. Warning klaxons shrieked on the bridge of the Eternal Vigilance. Commander, the Viril tactical officer cried out, his voice sharp with alarm Kalen Prime had never heard from him. Their ships, their FTL drives are charging, but not for a jump. They're overloading their reaction chambers, all of them. It's a synchronized sequence. Kalen Prime stared, his immortal mind struggling to process the input. Self-destruction of an entire fleet. It was madness, utter, incomprehensible madness. They're bluffing. It's a scare tactic. Fire warning shots. Disable their lead ship. But it was too late. The Stardust Drifter, the Curiosity's Echo, The Horizon Seeker, the Steadfast, and the Resolute became miniature suns. One by one, in a perfectly timed cascade, their engines breached their containment, their cores going critical. Not in random explosions, but in focused, directed blasts of pure, annihilating energy aimed directly at the eternal vigilance. The Viril flagship was rocked by colossal shockwaves. Its advanced shields, designed to repel conventional weaponry, flickered and buckled under the sheer, raw force of multiple, simultaneous warp core detonations at close range. Consoles exploded on the Viril bridge. Alarms blared, a symphony of impending disaster. Kalen Prime was thrown from his command throne, his immortal body experiencing impacts and stresses it had not felt in centuries. Through the chaos, through the shriek of tearing metal and dying systems, one last transmission from the Stardust Drifter cut through the Viril calms, Admiral Rostova's voice, laced with static but clear and defiant. "We are humanity. We die on our feet. We die for what we believe. This system will be our testament. Remember this day, Viril. Remember what happens when you push mortals too far." Then silence. Nothing but the crackle of residual energy and the groaning of the eternal vigilance's damaged hull. Kalen Prime, bruised and disoriented, pulled himself up. His bridge was a wreck. Half his crew were incapacitated, not dead. Viril physiology was incredibly resilient. But stunned, injured, their serene immortality shattered by the brutal, unexpected violence. He looked at the main view screen. Where the human fleet had been, there was now only a roiling, expanding cloud of superheated gas and debris, a funeral pyre burning fiercely in the cold vacuum of space. But the human ships had achieved their aim. The eternal vigilance was crippled. Its FTL drive was offline. Its primary weapon arrays were shattered. Its shields were down to bare emitters. It was, for the first time in its long service, vulnerable. More than the physical damage, however, was the psychological impact. The Viril crew stared at the remnants of the human fleet, their ancient minds reeling. These short-lived creatures, they had chosen this. They had embraced utter annihilation, not just for themselves, but for their ships, their history, their knowledge, all to make a point, to defy, to ensure their enemy paid a price. They killed themselves to hurt us," a young Viril ensign whispered, his voice trembling. The concept was so alien, so horrifying, it bordered on a sacrilege to their entire culture. Kalen Prime felt a cold dread seep into his millennia-old bones. He had faced down empires. He had dictated terms to civilizations. He had never encountered anything like this. This legacy of defiance, this willingness to turn one's own death into a weapon, it was a strategic and philosophical blind spot for the Viril. How do you threaten a species that doesn't fear oblivion in the same way you do? How do you conquer those who would rather burn their world than let you have it? "Status report," Kalen Prime managed, his voice raspy. The reports were grim: severe damage across multiple decks, FTL inoperable, sublight engines barely functioning. They were stranded for now in the graveyard of the human fleet. "Begin repairs," Kalen Prime ordered, "and send a coded message to the hegemony, highest priority." He paused, struggling for words. Inform them that the humans in this sector are an anomaly. They possess a death wish protocol of terrifying efficacy. Standard engagement doctrines are insufficient." The Viril hegemony eventually rescued the eternal vigilance. But the story of the Pathfinder fleet and their last light protocol spread like a virus through the hegemony's collective consciousness. Kalen Prime's report, detailing the calculated self-annihilation, was studied with a mixture of horror and disbelief. The Viril, who built their entire civilization on the premise of avoiding death, were confronted by a species that could stare it in the face, and in certain circumstances, embrace it as a tool of defiance. The disputed territory in the nebula of whispering shadows was quietly abandoned by the Viril. It was tainted. It was a memorial. No Viril wanted to tread on the ashes of a species that had made such a terrifying statement. Across the galaxy, other species began to hear whispers. The humans, those short-lived, emotional beings, had a sting no one had anticipated. A new term entered the galactic lexicon: the human memorial gambit. It was a warning. Pushing humanity too far, backing them into a corner with no acceptable way out, might result in not just resistance, but a spectacular, self-destructive act of defiance that would leave permanent scars, both physical and psychological. Humanity's standing in the galaxy shifted. They were still seen as emotional, perhaps even reckless. But fragile was a word few dared to use anymore. They had shown the Viril, and by extension, the rest of the galaxy, that even in death, humanity could achieve a victory of sorts, a victory of spirit, a legacy etched in fire and defiance that would echo through the stars long after their brief lives had ended. The immortals had been taught a profound lesson about mortality by those who lived it every day.